Hi, welcome to FinFlow Podcast. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a decision that practically every adult, wrestles with at some point. How do you actually get behind the wheel of a new car? Now, you might think it's just a simple choice. Do I buy it, maybe finance it, or do I just rent it long term, like a lease? But what if I told you that beneath the glossy showroom lights and the friendly salesperson, this decision hides a real labyrinth of financial complexities, and sometimes, let's be honest, outright traps. What if the path that seems easiest or maybe cheapest up front isn't actually the best route for your long-term financial well-being?
It's absolutely true. Our investigation into these car acquisition methods has really peeled back the layers here. It reveals just how deeply ingrained certain perceptions are about what constitutes a good deal. Many people, and it's quite understandable, they focus heavily on that enticing lower monthly payment figure. But they don't always fully grasp the total cost of ownership or, the broader implications for their personal finances down the line. The numbers we've crunched, and looking at the human element too, which is vital, well, they tell a pretty compelling story about challenging those initial assumptions.
Absolutely. So, our mission for this deep dive today is precisely that, to cut through all the marketing noise, all the jargon that gets thrown around. It can be really confusing. We're going to systematically lay out the four primary ways you can acquire a car. There are really four main ones we found. Then, we'll shine a light on which options truly offer the most value when you consider the complete financial picture, not just that monthly figure. And, perhaps most crucially, we'll explore those often overlooked psychological factors, the emotional pulls, the practical day-to-day considerations that powerfully sway our choices. Sometimes, these things nudge us away from what might actually be in our own financial best interests. The ultimate goal here is simple: to equip you, our listener, with the unvarnished truth, the real knowledge you need to make the most informed, most empowering decision for your next set of wheels. Okay, so when we talk about getting a car, most people, like I said, instantly envision either just buying it outright with cash or perhaps taking out a traditional loan. However, our comprehensive analysis really uncovered four distinct pathways. Each one has its own financial architecture, its own structure, and a unique set of implications for your wallet and your lifestyle. Let's begin our exploration with what many consider to be the most, straightforward approach. 1. The lay of the land. Decoding your car acquisition options. 1.1. Buying outright. Pure and simple ownership. The first method, and yeah, it's definitely the simplest on the face of it, is buying a car outright. This means exactly what it sounds like. You pay the full purchase price of the car on day one in one single lump sum. No loans involved, no monthly bills stretching out into the future for this car, just a clean, immediate transaction.
Yeah, from a purely financial obligation perspective, this method offers, unparalleled clarity and a definite sense of peace of mind for many people. You entirely bypass any ongoing payments for the vehicle itself. You incur absolutely zero interest charges, which can be significant with other methods, and you carry no associated debt for the car. The car is unequivocally yours from the moment the funds clear. It's free and clear of any financial encumbrances. It is, in essence, the purest form of asset ownership you can have in the automotive world. You retain complete control over its destiny. Feel free to modify it, drive it as much as you like without worrying about mileage caps, or sell it whenever you choose without any penalty from a finance company.
That sounds like the dream scenario for a lot of people, doesn't it? Just hand over the cash and boom, it's all yours. No strings attached, no nagging monthly bills popping up, no interest accumulating silently over time. It represents a very traditional, almost you could say old school approach. And for a significant number of people, it really embodies that ultimate financial freedom when it comes to a major purchase like a car. The simplicity itself is inherently appealing. It removes a whole layer of financial stress. 1.2, financing, hire purchase. The loan for your ride. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the second option, and this one is exceedingly common: financing a car. In places like the UK, this is often known as hire purchase or HP. But its mechanics, its basic structure, are quite similar to a standard personal loan you might take out for any other substantial purchase. In essence, you're buying the car incrementally, bit by bit, over a defined period until it becomes entirely yours.
That's a good way to put it. The process typically kicks off with an initial deposit paid up front. This directly reduces the total amount you need to borrow. The remaining balance, the outstanding amount, is then borrowed from a finance company at a predetermined interest rate. This rate is crucial, and it's spread over an agreed term. Now, for our comparisons today, just to keep things consistent, we'll consistently use a 3-year agreement. Throughout this term, you make fixed, consistent monthly repayments. Now, a critical distinction here compared to, say, leasing, is that with hire purchase, you are committed to paying off the entire original value of the car over the loan term. plus that interest, of course. This commitment to repaying the full principal, the full price, directly influences the size of those monthly repayments. They tend to be higher. It's a transparent route to full ownership, definitely. But that interest component is a cost that absolutely must be factored into the overall expense. You can't ignore it. What's important to grasp, though, is that unlike some other options we'll discuss, every single payment you make here contributes towards your equity in the vehicle. You're building ownership value.
Right. So at the close of that, say, 3-year period, once every single scheduled payment has been successfully made, the car is unequivocally yours. You own it outright, much as you would have if you'd bought it with cash on day one, but you've had the flexibility of spreading that significant cost over time, albeit, and it's a big albeit, with the added expense of interest charges. This makes car ownership accessible to those who don't have the full, say, 30,000 pounds cash sitting around up front, but who still genuinely desire full ownership at the end.
Long-term rental model.
Okay, moving on to our third pathway now, we encounter leasing. Now, this is a fundamentally different concept compared to the previous two, because the end goal here isn't ownership at all, not even potentially. Instead, you're essentially just renting a car for an extended duration, typically 2, 3, or sometimes even 4 years. Think of it like a long-term subscription.
It's precisely that long-term rental mindset that really sets leasing apart. And it's why it appeals to certain people. Many individuals are drawn to leasing because of those, often alluringly lower monthly payments. They can seem incredibly attractive for managing monthly cash flow, right? However, it's absolutely vital, crucial even, to understand how these payments are calculated. It's different. Unlike hire purchase, where your payments are chipping away at the car's full purchase price, building your equity. With a lease, your monthly payments are primarily designed to cover the amount the car is expected to depreciate, to lose value during the specific period you have it. On top of that depreciation cost, you'll also be paying various fees, taxes, and naturally, the leasing company's profit margin. They're not doing it for free, so you're not financing the entire asset value. You're only paying for the portion of its value that it effectively loses while it's in your possession. Just the usage cost, essentially.
So it really is like a subscription service for a car, isn't it? Rather than actually owning the product itself. And that lower monthly outlay definitely catches the eye, no doubt about it, because you're effectively just paying for the usage and the inevitable depreciation rather than tackling the entire asset's initial, often hefty value. The significant implication, of course, and this is key, is that when the contract concludes, you simply return the car. You hand back the keys to the dealership or the leasing company. Ownership is never transferred to you. It was never on the table. For many, this offers a kind of revolving door approach to motoring. It enables them to regularly get into a new vehicle every few years without the longer-term commitment and, crucially, without the potential hassle and uncertainty of having to sell a used car themselves later on. 1.4. Personal contract purchase. PCP. The flexible, popular choice. Okay, now let's peel back yet another layer and talk about the fourth option, which is personal contract purchase, or PCP. Now, this one is incredibly popular, particularly here in the UK. It seems ubiquitous, and it's almost always the option that dealerships, well, heavily promote. They push it hard. It's a fascinating hybrid model, really, blending elements of both traditional financing like HP and leasing. On the surface, it seems to offer a tremendous amount of flexibility, which sounds great, but the big question that arises for your wallet is, does that flexibility always translate into the best financial outcome for you, the consumer?
That's the absolute critical point, yes. Because PCP's popularity is certainly driven by that perceived flexibility and those often lower monthly payments compared to outright financing, like hire purchase. Let's break down its mechanics quickly. You begin by agreeing on a contract term, usually somewhere between 2 and 4 years, and you pay an initial deposit, much like you would with hire purchase. Standard stuff so far. But here's where it gets interesting. Quite different. The finance company provides you with what's called a guaranteed minimum future value, or GMFV, for the car. Now, this isn't just a random guess. It's their expert projection, their guarantee of what the car will be worth at the very end of your specific agreement period. This GMFV figure, along with your initial deposit, is then subtracted from the car's initial purchase cost. And that difference is the amount you are effectively borrowing and paying interest on during the contract term. Because you're only financing the difference between the car's initial price and its guaranteed future value, the depreciation, essentially. Your monthly payments are significantly lower than they would be with a traditional hire purchase arrangement where you're financing the entire car value from day one.
Okay, I think I follow that. Lower payments, because you're not paying off the full whack initially. And if I understand correctly, the real flexibility you mentioned, the bit that makes PCP unique, really kicks in when the contract reaches its conclusion. That's when you have some pretty significant choices to make, right?
Precisely. That end of contract moment is pivotal with PCP. You're presented with three distinct options, three paths you can take. Your first choice is, you can choose to keep the car. To do this, you must pay that pre-agreed final lump sum, which is the GMF fee we just talked about. Think of it as the deferred final payment to secure ownership of the car's remaining value. Your second choice is simpler. You can just return the car to the dealership, hand back the keys, walk away, which, importantly, is always subject to certain condition and mileage clauses, fair wear and tear, staying under the mileage limit. We absolutely need to explore those in detail later as they can sting. And then there's the third option, which is perhaps the most enticing one for the dealerships and why they often favor PCP. You can use the car's GMF fee, or potentially any equity you might have if the car is worth more than the GMF fee, as a deposit towards a new car with the same dealership. You effectively trade it in and roll straight into a brand new PCP agreement on a new vehicle. This cycle is a powerful driver of repeat business and customer retention for them.
But as we'll soon see when we actually dissect the numbers, this popularity, this ease of rolling over, doesn't automatically equate to being the most cost-effective option for you. It's absolutely vital to look beyond just that attractive lower monthly payment.
Right, okay. So we've laid out the landscape now. We've got buying outright, higher purchase for ownership over time, leasing as a long-term rental, and PCP as this popular, flexible hybrid. But understanding these options conceptually is really just the first step, isn't it? The real game changer, the truly empowering insight for you, comes when we get down to the hard numbers, the brass tacks. Which of these pathways actually leaves more money in your pocket at the end of the day? That's where we need to turn our attention next.
Absolutely. And to conduct a truly meaningful comparison, a fair one, we had to establish a consistent framework. We needed to compare apples with apples, essentially. You can't compare different term lengths or deposits easily. So we've leveraged a robust analysis based on a representative, fairly common, medium-sized family car to rigorously illustrate the financial divergences, the real cost differences that emerge from each of these approaches. Without such a clear and consistent benchmark, any comparison would be, well, akin to trying to weigh different types of fruit without a properly calibrated scale. It just wouldn't be accurate. This allows us to quantify the real-world impact on your finances based on a realistic scenario. 2. Running the numbers, a deep dive into the costs. 2.1. The setup, our apples-to-apples comparison.
Okay, good. So we're not just speculating here. We're not pulling numbers out of thin air. We've meticulously constructed a specific scenario to highlight precisely how these different options stack up side by side for you. For our comparison, we selected an Audi A3. We feel this is a solid and pretty representative example of an average medium-sized family car. It's got a typical initial purchase price for its class, which we set at £30,000. It's also a popular model, which makes the figures hopefully highly relatable for many listeners.
Exactly. And to ensure the utmost consistency in our financial modeling, which is key for a fair comparison, we applied a standard 15% deposit across all the options where a deposit is typically required. On a £30,000 car, this amounts to a £4,500 deposit. Furthermore, as I mentioned, we've used a consistent 3-year agreement term for a direct, unambiguous comparison between the different financing methods. 3 years is a very common term length. Now, crucially, when calculating the net cost for options that involve an eventual sale or valuation like HP or buying outright, we made an informed assumption regarding the car's resale value after these 3 years. We've pegged it at £16,000. And I want to emphasize, this is a conservative estimate. We need to be realistic here. While current used car prices have experienced a really unusual surge, a bubble, as many market analysts are describing it, this phenomenon is widely anticipated to normalize or perhaps even burst over the next few years. Therefore, projecting a resale value of, say, £20,000 or even more 3 years from now, though it might look appealing, simply isn't a realistic or responsible figure to use for sound financial planning.
It's always prudent, always smarter, to use realistic, even slightly cautious figures when you're projecting future asset values, especially for depreciating assets like cars.
That makes perfect sense. Best to be conservative and pleasantly surprised than optimistic and caught short. Okay, setting up these parameters are £30,000 Audi A3, the £4,500 deposit, a 3-year term, and that £16,000 realistic future value allows us to really see the true financial impact without being swayed by, temporary market weirdness or overly optimistic projections. So, with that framework in place, let's start dissecting the actual costs for each option. Where do we begin? 2.2. Higher purchase. Ownership with a price tag. Let's begin by crunching the numbers for hire purchase, or HP. That's the traditional finance option that eventually grants you full ownership. So with our £4,500 deposit on the £30,000 Audi A3 and using an interest rate we secured for this comparison at just under 11%, which reflects current market conditions reasonably well, the monthly payments come in at a pretty substantial £810 over the 3-year term. Wow, okay, £810 a month. For many households, that's a significant chunk out of the monthly budget, isn't it?
It certainly is. And those monthly payments, when you total them up over the full 3 years, 36 months, the entire sum you have paid for the car to just under £34,000. That's the total cash outlay to achieve full ownership via HP in this scenario. Now let's factor in our conservative assumed resale value. If you sell the car for £16,000 after those 3 years, the effective net cost of having owned and used the car for those 3 years is approximately £17,500. That's the £34,000 total paid minus the £16,000 recouped. This calculation, £17,500, gives us a clear picture of the cost of consumption, the cost of usage over the period. The primary benefit of this option, as we've said, is the ultimate full ownership and the complete control it affords you. No mileage worries, freedom to modify, etc. However, as you just noted, the higher interest rate, combined with the fact that you are financing the entire initial value of the car, minus the deposit, of course, results in considerably high monthly outlays compared to some of the other options we'll explore. It's a straightforward, transparent route to ownership, definitely, but its price tag, both in terms of those hefty monthly payments and the overall expenditure if you sell, is certainly notable.
Right, so it's a clear trade-off then. You get the security and freedom of full ownership, no end-of-contract worries about condition or mileage. But it comes at a higher monthly cost and a significant overall financial cost just for the usage of the car over those 3 years compared to maybe just renting it.
The rent and return model.
Okay, now let's sharply contrast that higher purchase scenario with the leasing model. This should be interesting. Using the identical £4,500 deposit on our same £30,000 Audi A3, the monthly payments for a lease are dramatically lower. They come in at $345 per month in our comparison. Wow, that's a staggering difference, isn't it? £810 a month for hire purchase versus $345 for leasing. That's less than half. For many people looking to manage their cash flow, keep monthly expenses down, that difference alone presents a profoundly compelling argument for leasing, doesn't it?
It's truly a stark contrast, yeah. And it beautifully illustrates how the underlying payment structure, what you're actually paying for, leads to such disparate outcomes in monthly cost. As we discussed earlier with leasing, you are specifically paying primarily for the car's expected depreciation during your contractual period, alongside various fees, taxes, and the leasing company's margin. You're not paying off the full purchase price. So when you sum up all those 345 monthly payments over the same 3 years, the total cost for having the use of the car in this scenario comes out to approximately £17,000. Now here's a fascinating point. From a pure cost of usage perspective over that specific 3-year time frame, leasing actually emerges as marginally cheaper than the hire purchase option in our example. Remember, HP had a net cost of £17,500 after selling the car for £16,000. Leasing's total cost was £17,000. So slightly cheaper just to use it for 3 years via lease. It's also worth reiterating that while some lease agreements might offer an option to purchase the vehicle at the end of the term, this isn't universally guaranteed at all. And crucially, that final purchase price typically won't be disclosed or even known until the final few months of the lease contract. This introduces a significant element of uncertainty for you if outright ownership might eventually be something you're considering down the line. You can't plan for it easily.
Right. So if your primary focus is purely on minimizing the cost of using a brand new car for a fixed period, say 3 years, and you genuinely don't care about owning it at the end, then based on these numbers, leasing looks like a very strong contender on paper. Cheaper usage costs than HP.
The dealership's favorite, but it's yours.
All right, now let's dive into the really interesting one, personal contract purchase, or PCP. The option that virtually every dealership seems to champion, the one they really push. Okay, sticking with our consistent setup, £4,500 deposit on the £30,000 Audi A3, the same interest rate just under 11%, and crucially, a pre-agreed guaranteed minimum future value, GMFV, set at £15,000 after 3 years. With those parameters, the monthly payments for PCP work out to 453 years. Now, this sits higher than the 345 for leasing, but still considerably lower than the 810 pounds for hire purchase. It's kind of in the middle, but this is where the plot really thickens, doesn't it? The option that is consistently pushed the hardest by the dealerships actually appears to be more expensive than two other viable options, depending entirely on the choices you make at the end of the contract. That, to me, feels like a massive revelation for anyone just walking into a car showroom thinking PCP is the default best choice because it's offered so readily.
It's a truly powerful observation, yes. And it really compels us to ask that crucial question. Why is the most popular option, the one most heavily marketed, often not the most financially advantageous for you, the consumer? Let's meticulously break down the numbers based on those critical choices you face at the end of the PCP contract after 3 years. Scenario 1. You decide to simply return the car. You've had enough. You hand back the keys. In this case, your total expenditure for the use of that car, deposit plus 36 monthly payments, would be approximately £21,000. Now, let's immediately put that £21,000 into perspective. If your intention all along was simply to have a new car for 3 years and then hand it back without ownership, opting for the lease instead would have saved you nearly £4,000. Remember, the lease cost was £17,000 for the same usage period compared to the £21,000 for PCP if you just return it. That's a significant chunk of money left on the table.
Wow. Okay, £4,000 difference just by choosing lease over PCP if you plan to return the car anyway. That's genuinely impactful. So, for those who simply want a new car for a few years, a temporary arrangement, and plan to hand it back, leasing seems to be the clear financial winner over PCP based on these figures.
Absolutely. Undeniably so in this scenario. And the disparity, the potential financial disadvantage of PCP, becomes even more striking when we consider the other main outcome. What if your intention was actually to eventually own the car? So at the end of the PCP contract, you choose to keep it by paying that final £15,000 lump sum, the GMF fee. In that specific scenario, your total cost for acquiring the car via PCP, deposit plus monthly payments plus final GMF fee payment, actually balloons to a grand total of £36,000. Now here's the crucial insight. If ownership was your ultimate goal from the start, the straightforward hire purchase option would have unequivocally been cheaper for you. It would have saved you money. Remember, the total cost for HP ownership was just under £34,000 compared to the £36,000 it costs by PCP if you decide to keep it. So HP is cheaper for ownership. This highlights very, very clearly the critical importance of truly understanding the intricate financial mechanics at play here, rather than just passively accepting the path of least resistance or what's presented by the dealer as the most convenient or flexible option. While PCP undeniably offers flexibility with those end-of-term choices, that flexibility invariably comes at a tangible financial premium, as these numbers unequivocally demonstrate in both main scenarios, returning or keeping.
That really puts into sharp relief why dealerships so aggressively promote PCP, doesn't it? It seems clear now. It appears to be, by far, the most lucrative option for their business model, not necessarily for the customer's wallet.
It undeniably is from their perspective. Dealerships derive maximum profitability from PCP because the entire structure is, frankly, ingeniously designed to keep you cycling within their customer ecosystem. By offering those lower initial monthly payments, which are psychologically very appealing, and then presenting that perfectly timed invitation to part exchange your vehicle at the end of the contract using the GMF fee, well, they secure repeat business almost automatically. They effectively ensure you're continuously upgrading through them, keeping you locked in a profitable cycle for the dealership, financing car after car. Furthermore, they have very subtle tactics and levers they can pull to make PCP appear even more attractive up front. They might offer things like dealer contributions toward your deposit, which seemingly reduce your payments but might just be built into the overall price elsewhere. Or they strategically adjust deposit amounts or even the GMF fee itself. All of these maneuvers can effectively mask the true total overall cost you're actually paying over the life of the agreement and beyond. For instance, a very generous sounding GMF fee might seem good, making monthly payments lower. But if it's set artificially high, you could find yourself with zero actual equity at the end, or even negative equity, essentially forcing you to trade in with them or pay to get out. You have no leverage. Conversely, if the GMFV is set too low compared to the car's likely real market value, you might miss out on potential equity you could have used or realized yourself if you sold privately. But the dealer knows they can then profit significantly by selling that car on the used market for more than the GMFV you settled at. It's a very sophisticated system, often masterfully engineered to maximize their profitability, which, while obviously beneficial for the dealership, is often, as we've seen, to the financial detriment of your bottom line compared to other options. 2.5. Buying outright. The initial sticker shock versus long-term value.
Okay, so after dissecting the complex and sometimes costly ins and outs of hire purchase, leasing, and especially PCP, let's circle back briefly to where we started. The first option, buying outright with cash. If you happen to possess the liquid capital readily available to simply purchase the car for the full £30,000 upfront, well, and based on these direct comparative numbers we've run, it emerges as the undeniable financial winner purely in terms of the cost of having the car for those 3 years. There are simply no monthly payments to worry about, no interest charges accumulating, just a straightforward singular transaction. Clean and simple.
Precisely. With that significant initial upfront cost of £30,000, and then assuming, as per our consistent scenario, that you subsequently sell the vehicle for our projected realistic value of £60,000 after 3 years of ownership, the net cost for having owned and used the car for those 3 years is calculated at a mere £14,000, 30k, 16k. This calculation clearly positions buying outright as the most economical choice when focusing solely on the direct cost of using the car over that specific 3-year period. It beats HP 17.5k, leasing 17k, and PCP return 21k, keep 36k total cost. It's the most direct and unencumbered method to completely eliminate any ongoing financial commitments tied directly to the vehicle itself once it's purchased. It offers absolute clarity and a clean break from monthly outlays, which is very appealing psychologically for money. 2.6, the opportunity cost factor. Beyond the car's price, however, and this is a really big however, this entire discussion, this comparison, would be fundamentally incomplete without introducing a truly pivotal financial concept, opportunity cost.
We've just clearly established that buying outright is the cheapest option in terms of the car's immediate, direct cost of use over 3 years in our example. Fine. But sophisticated financial thinking isn't just about the direct price of the item. It's profoundly about the cost of the capital you're deploying to acquire that item. What else could that money be doing?
Yes, opportunity cost. That's a huge distinction, isn't it? And it potentially changes the entire perspective on what cheapest really means. The dilemma is this, right? If you choose to commit that full, substantial £30,000 into a car up front, that significant sum of capital becomes instantly locked up. It's tied down.
Yeah.
And it's locked up in an asset, the car, that overwhelmingly and inevitably is depreciating in value every single day you own it. It's losing money, not making it. You've effectively frozen a substantial portion of your wealth in something that will, by its very nature, be worth less tomorrow, next month, next year than it is today.
Exactly. And this is where shrewd strategic financial planning truly comes into play, moving beyond just the car purchase itself. Consider an alternative scenario for a moment. What if you put down only the necessary £4,500 deposit for one of the more cash flow friendly financing options, like hire purchase or maybe even PCP, despite their other costs? And then you strategically invested the remaining £25,500, the money you didn't spend up front, on the car elsewhere. Think about placing it into something like a well-diversified broad market index fund, perhaps tracking the S&P 500 or a global index, or another type of cash-generating asset that has a solid historical track record of delivering positive returns over time. The fundamental question you must ask yourself then is, can you realistically generate a better return on that invested £25,500 over, say, 3 years than the additional cost, mostly interest, incurred through choosing a financing option instead of paying cash? Let's run a quick hypothetical just to illustrate the point.
Yeah, I love a good hypothetical. Let's see how the numbers might play out here. Walk us through it.
All right. Let's say, for argument's sake, you invest that £25,500 over the same 3-year period. And let's assume you manage to achieve an average annual return of 7% after fees. That's a pretty reasonable, historically achievable long-term average for a diversified equity index, though obviously not guaranteed year to year. After 3 years, compounded, that initial £25,500 investment could potentially grow to approximately £31,213. That represents a gain, a profit, of about £5,713 on your invested capital. Money earned, not spent. And let's quickly revisit our hire purchase scenario. The effective net cost of using the car was £17,500, 34k total, paid 16k resale. If you were to mentally subtract those investment gains of £5,713 from the HP cost, your net effective cost for having the car, once you factor in the opportunity cost of the capital you didn't tie up, effectively drops significantly. It might even bring it closer to, or potentially below, the £14,000 net cost of buying outright, where your capital just sat depreciating in the car. In contrast, if you bought outright, your entire £30,000 was sitting there, locked in a depreciating asset, earning nothing, in fact, losing value.
So for someone who is laser-focused on long-term wealth accumulation and making their capital work hard for them, tying up a large sum in a depreciating asset like a car might actually be a less attractive option than leveraging that capital to potentially earn returns elsewhere, even if it means slightly higher total car-related payments due to interest on finance.
The concept of what is truly cheapest becomes far more nuanced, far more sophisticated. It needs to encompass not just the explicit, visible cost of the car itself, but also the implicit, often invisible cost of foregoing potential investment gains on that capital.
Right. So what does this all really mean for you, the listener? It means the cheapest option isn't some simple, clear-cut answer found only on the car's price tag or the monthly payment. It's far from it. It depends profoundly on your specific individual financial situation. Do you have that lump sum available? It depends on your access to and comfort with investment opportunities. And what else you realistically could be doing with that significant chunk of capital if you didn't sink it all into the car up front. It fundamentally shifts the focus, doesn't it? From merely looking at the car's direct cost in isolation to considering the overall efficiency and growth potential of your entire financial portfolio. It's about being a smart capital allocator, really, not just a car buyer. Okay, wow. We've meticulously dissected the raw financial data, looked at the numbers from multiple angles, including opportunity costs, and those figures provide an incredibly clear, if complex, picture. But as any seasoned financial planner, or frankly anyone who's made a big money decision will tell you, these choices aren't made in a vacuum. They aren't purely logical calculations, they are profoundly human decisions. Our personal preferences, our deeply ingrained habits, our comfort levels, and even our individual tolerance for financial risk play an enormous, often unconscious role in these significant life decisions. It's never just about the spreadsheet figures. It's intrinsically linked to your lifestyle, your values, what you prioritize, and ultimately what brings you peace of mind or suits your personality. For many people, let's face it, a car transcends being mere transportation. It's a vital part of their daily routine, their independence, and sometimes even a subtle extension of their personal identity or status.
That's absolutely right. While the rigorous financial analysis is paramount and it provides invaluable objective data to inform the decision, completely overlooking these psychological and practical factors can easily lead to significant buyer's remorse down the road. Even if the numbers on the paper looked absolutely perfect at the time, the best financial decision, when applied in the real world, often necessitates a careful and thoughtful balancing act with what feels like the best decision for your unique personal circumstances, your driving habits, and your deeply held preferences about ownership versus flexibility. This is really where the art meets the science of personal finance, isn't it? Finding that optimal blend. 3. Beyond the balance sheet, the human element of car choices. 3.1. The long-term commitment, when ownership makes sense.
Let's start by considering those individuals who really value a long-term commitment, people who aren't looking to change cars every few years. If you're someone who genuinely tends to keep their cars for an extended period, maybe 5 years, 7 years, or even a decade or more, then the whole notion of full, unencumbered ownership, achieved either through a hire purchase agreement that you pay off or an outright cash buy from the start, really resonates strongly, doesn't it? If you are that person who absolutely detests the idea of monthly bills stretching out indefinitely into the future, who wants to truly own their vehicle in every single sense of the word, then HP or an outright purchase profoundly appeals to that innate human desire for stability, for control, and for long-term tangible value. It feels solid.
It's a very powerful psychological anchor for many. That perceived value and security of full ownership. It often goes far beyond just the asset itself. It's about the tangible freedom from ongoing financial obligations related to that asset. Once that car is fully paid off, whether through a single lump sum or diligently making those final HP installments, you entirely eliminate the background stress of those recurring payments appearing on your bank statement. You gain absolute, undisputed ownership, which affords you the complete liberty to modify the car as you desire. Maybe you want a new sound system, perhaps some specific aesthetic enhancements like different wheels or even performance upgrades down the line, all without needing permission from or violating the terms of a finance company contract. Furthermore, and this is a big one for some drivers, there are absolutely no restrictive clauses on mileage. You have unparalleled freedom to drive wherever and whenever you wish, without constantly checking the odometer or worrying about penalty charges. However, and this is a crucial counterpoint, the other side of the ownership coin, this high level of control and freedom, comes hand in hand with the inherent and undivided responsibility for all maintenance and any unexpected repairs that might crop up. And these costs, it must be acknowledged, tend to escalate, sometimes quite significantly, as a car ages beyond its initial manufacturer's warranty period, which is often around 3 to 5 years. So while you might save on finance payments eventually, you absolutely need to be prepared and budget prudently for these potentially rising maintenance or repair expenses as the car gets older. Ownership means owning the problems too.
Right. It's a genuine trade-off then. Complete freedom with the car, but also complete financial responsibility for its upkeep and potential problems down the line. You take the good with the bad. 3.2. The lure of the new. Flexibility and fresh wheels. Okay, now let's flip that coin. Let's look at the other side. What if you're someone who simply adores that fresh off the lot feeling, that new car smell? What if you consistently prefer driving the latest models with the newest tech and safety features, and you genuinely enjoy the thrill of upgrading your vehicle regularly, perhaps every 2, 3, or 4 years? You like change. For that specific mindset, for that type of person, options like a lease or a PCP agreement can sound incredibly appealing, can't they? Almost like a perpetually worry-free, constantly updated car experience. You get to constantly drive the newest models, stay updated with the latest technological features, always have that cutting-edge feel, and potentially avoid the headaches of older cars.
Yeah, for this particular demographic, for people who prioritize newness and regular changes, leasing, or PCP, offers a really compelling suite of benefits. Firstly, and perhaps most obviously, there's the sheer delight and undeniable convenience of being able to drive a brand new car much more frequently than if you were buying outright and holding on to it for many years. Secondly, as our numbers clearly demonstrated earlier, these options generally involve substantially lower monthly payments compared to buying outright in terms of upfront cash or traditional financing like hire purchase. This can be a significant advantage for managing the monthly budget and freeing up cash flow for other things. Thirdly, a major stress point for many car owners is completely sidestepped. The perennial hassle and often unpredictable uncertainty involved in selling a used car in the future. Getting a fair price, dealing with buyers, it can be a pain. With leasing or PCP, if you return it, you simply hand the keys back at the end of the agreed term. Done. Finally, and this is a big draw for some, there's the distinct potential to effectively avoid the burden of major, unexpected, and often expensive out-of-warranty maintenance costs. How? Because you're typically trading in or returning these vehicles before the manufacturer's warranty expires, which frequently aligns nicely with that common 3-year contract mark. This predictability can instill a very welcome sense of control and stability regarding your ongoing motoring expenses. Fewer nasty surprises.
It really does sound like a genuinely attractive proposition for many people, that feeling of always having a new, reliable, warranted car without the long-term headaches of aging vehicles and the hassle of selling. I can see the appeal. 3.3. The fine print. Hidden costs and restrictions. However, there's always a however, isn't there? This idyllic, perceived, worry-free experience that comes with leasing and PCP very often comes bundled with some incredibly important fine print. Details that you absolutely need to be acutely aware of before signing on the dotted line. It's not quite as simple as just enjoying the new car and then handing back the keys consequence-free. What are some of those less obvious, potentially hidden costs and stringent restrictions that can catch so many people by surprise at the end of the contract?
This is precisely where understanding the detailed contract terms becomes absolutely paramount. It's boring, but essential. If we connect this to the broader picture of consumer awareness, the perceived worry-free aspect of leasing, or PCP, undeniably comes with its own distinctive set of responsibilities and potential financial pitfalls if you're not careful. For both lease and PCP agreements, there are typically extremely strict requirements regarding the physical condition in which you must return the vehicle at the end of the term. Any minor bumps, scratches, dings on the doors, scuffs on the alloy wheels, or even excessive wear and tear on the interior upholstery that falls beyond what the finance company classifies as fair wear and tear, and their definition might be stricter than yours, will almost certainly result in penalty charges when you hand it back. I've personally known instances where friends have been unexpectedly charged hundreds of pounds for seemingly minor alloy wheel scuffs they barely noticed, or even for a slightly stained carpet that they thought was negligible wear. These charges add up. Furthermore, as we touched on briefly, you'll find significant restrictions on making any changes or modifications to the car whatsoever. Forget about adding custom spoilers, upgrading the stereo, or even tinting the windows. Even subtle changes usually require explicit written permission from the finance company, and often they simply aren't allowed at all. You have to return it as standard.
Right. So absolutely no personal touches or little upgrades to make it feel more yours for the entire duration of the contract then. You're just a temporary custodian.
Precisely. You're driving their asset, essentially. And perhaps most significantly for many drivers, both leasing and PCP options come with very strict annual mileage limits. This is a huge one, often underestimated. Typical limits might be something like 10,000 or maybe 12,000 miles per year. sometimes even less on the cheapest deals. Exceeding these agreed limits incurs additional costs per mile, often called excess mileage charges. And these charges can quickly, and I mean very quickly, accumulate into a substantial bill at the end of the contract. We're talking maybe 10p, 15p, even 20p per mile over the limit. These penalty charges can swiftly erode or even completely wipe out any perceived monthly savings you might have enjoyed throughout the contract term. A few thousand miles over can cost hundreds, even thousands of pounds. This raises an absolutely vital question for you to consider honestly before committing. Are you genuinely willing and realistically able to adhere to these often quite strict conditions regarding the car's physical condition and, critically, its annual mileage for the sake of those lower monthly payments?
For some people, the inherent freedom to drive without constantly watching the odometer, or the freedom to truly personalize their vehicle and make it their own, is a fundamental need. And for them, that freedom is unequivocally worth the potentially higher upfront or monthly cost associated with outright ownership via cash or HP.
So, when you boil it all down, what does this all truly mean for you, the person trying to decide? It's a very delicate balancing act, isn't it? It's a real trade-off. The attractive freedom from worrying about major maintenance bills on an aging car and the undeniable appeal of always having a new set of wheels might be incredibly compelling on one side, but that comes at the potential cost of the freedom to drive as much as you actually want or need to, or the freedom to genuinely make that car feel yours through personalization or modifications. It really boils down to a personal calculation. How much do you prioritize that ultimate flexibility and newness versus that ultimate control and freedom of traditional ownership?
Indeed. And this naturally leads us to a crucial piece of general advice, a sort of smart alternative strategy that, unless you happen to possess expert knowledge and enjoy the cut and thrust of buying and flipping cars for profit, is consistently a highly recommended financial strategy for many people. Seriously, consider buying a pre-owned car that is perhaps 2 to 3 years old rather than brand new. This approach brilliantly allows someone else, the car's initial owner, to absorb the most substantial chunk of initial depreciation. That first hit, the steepest drop in value a car typically takes, happens in its first couple of years. Let someone else pay for that. This strategy often makes acquiring a relatively new, high-quality, often low-mileage pre-owned vehicle the single best financial option overall for balancing cost and quality. You gain many of the benefits of a newer vehicle, modern features, potentially still under a portion of the original manufacturer's warranty for peace of mind, but with a significantly reduced total cost of ownership because you've cleverly sidestepped paying for that heaviest financial burden of immediate, steep depreciation. It's often the sweet spot.
Wow. What an incredibly eye-opening and I think really practical deep dive we've had today. It feels like we've really navigated the sometimes complex, often quite controversial world of car acquisition. We've meticulously explored the 4 main options available to you: buying outright, financing via hire purchase, leasing as a long-term rental, and the ever-popular personal contract purchase, PCP. We've definitely unearthed some truly surprising financial insights along the way, particularly how the most popular options, like PCP, aren't always the most economical depending on your end goal. That was a big one for me. And crucially, we've also delved into those profound psychological and practical factors: the lure of the new, the comfort of ownership, the fear of unexpected bills, the constraints of fine print that so powerfully sway our choices, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. It's abundantly clear, isn't it, that there's no single best option that fits absolutely everyone. It's highly personal. But the power of truly understanding the underlying costs, the hidden catches, and the nuanced considerations for each path is, without doubt, profoundly empowering for you when you next face this big decision.
It truly is. I think the most valuable takeaway, the core insight from our discussion today, is the immense power and importance of performing your own diligent analysis. Don't just rely on the headline figures presented. Don't simply accept what is presented to you in the glossy brochure or by the salesperson in the showroom, who inevitably has their own targets and incentives. Thoughtfully considering the opportunity cost of your hard-earned capital, as we discussed, and meticulously evaluating how each different financing option genuinely aligns with your specific, individual long-term financial goals and your lifestyle needs. Those are the absolutely crucial steps. This entire exercise, this deep dive, is really about empowering you to make a choice that genuinely serves your financial well-being, your practical needs, your lifestyle, and ultimately, your peace of mind.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to consider as you weigh your next car decision, or perhaps reflect on your current one. Given everything we've unpacked today, the cold, hard financial realities, the potential hidden costs and restrictions, the fundamental trade-offs between flexibility and control if you are given the task, a blank sheet of paper to design the perfect car ownership or usership model, one that seamlessly balances optimal cost-effectiveness, ultimate flexibility for your life, and the pure, simple joy of driving. What would that ideal model look like specifically for your unique life and your personal financial aspirations? What elements cost, ownership, newness, freedom, lack of hassle would you prioritize above all else? Something to mull over. Thanks for watching this. In the next episode, like, subscribe, and share.